CCC is merely days away and we still have so much left to cover. Hello everyone, Soberoni of G&A Reviews here, and in today's spotlight we'll be taking a look at the spicy JK Fox, Suzuka. We'll be examining her stats and skills, as well as going over pointers and how to utilize her effectively, and an overall grade comparing her to how she stacks up to the other 4-star servants. Now, onto Suzuka's stats. Suzuka has a max HP of 11,753 and a max attack of 9,544. Both her HP and attack stats are just about average for a 4-star saber, but overall both of her HP and attack stats are slightly above average compared to the rest of the 4-star servants. Suzuka's stat spread is balanced and pretty strong when compared to the average 4-star. Taking a look at her skills, her first skill is Supernatural Power rank B. It increases her Buster Card effectiveness for 1 turn between 20 and 40%, and increases her crit star drop rate for 1 turn between 30 and 50%, both depending on level. Her second skill is Mystic Eyes rank B+. It has between a 50 and 100% chance to inflict charm on a male for 1 turn, and decreases their attack for 1 turn between 10 and 20%, both depending on level. And finally, her last skill is Blessing of Wisdom rank C. It increases her NP gauge per turn for 5 turns between 5 and 10% depending on level. It also applies Sure Hit for 3 turns and increases her NP strength for 3 turns by 20%. Moving on to her passives, she has Magic Resistance rank A, which increases her debuff resist by 20%, Riding rank B, which increases her quick card effectiveness by 8%, and Divinity rank A, which applies damage plus 200. Taking a look at her deck and Noble Phantasm, she has an Arts Buster deck with Quick Arts Buster, and a Buster Noble Phantasm. Her Noble Phantasm is Tenkiyame. It deals heavy damage to all enemies with between a 300 and 500% damage modifier depending on level. It also increases her crit strength for 3 turns between 40 and 80% depending on overcharge. Taking a closer look at her cards, we see that her Quick card hits 3 times, her Arts card hits 3 times, her Buster hits 3 times, and her Extra attack hits 4 times. She has an NP gain rate of 0.57% and a star rate of 10.2%. She has good NP gain due to the 3 hits on her Arts card, but very poor star generating outside of her 10-hit Noble Phantasm. Like most sabers, Suzuka sports very well balanced and high stats, so she can take a hit and dish one back too. She also has pretty good NP gain because of the overall high amount of hits on her cards, but what really sets her apart from the other sabers is her heavily offensive and crit based skill set. Right off the bat, Suzuka has a powerhouse skill in Supernatural Power. It grants her a powerful 40% Buster Card buff and a 50% crit star drop rate buff. This is Suzuka's version of Mana Burst that is custom made just to fit her crit-oriented playstyle. Compared to the traditional Mana Burst, you're trading 10% extra buster damage for an extra 50% crit star generating, which is more than worth it, especially considering that this skill is a super steroid for her Noble Phantasm, enabling it to deal both good damage and higher star generating, not unlike Emiya's Unlimited Blade Works. But that isn't all. Suzuka packs another high Noble Phantasm synergy skill with Blessing of Wisdom. Blessing of Wisdom is Suzuka's main source of NP gain because it grants a long-lasting 5-turn NP charge along with an NP damage buff and Sure Hit so that you can pierce enemy evade. The NP damage buff is great because it stacks multiplicatively with your Mana Burst, but of greater importance is the high uptime on the NP charge. At max rank, this skill has a 6-turn cooldown, meaning that for 80% of the battle, Suzuka is going to be getting a free 10% NP charge every turn. Finally, Suzuka does have a bit of utility in Mystic Eyes. It's a charm with a high hit chance that also lowers enemy attack. It can be situationally strong, but it only works on males, so don't rely on it too much. Skill level priority should be Supernatural Power first for the big damage and star generating buff, followed by Blessing of Wisdom for that great NP charge, and then finally Mystic Eyes as it's more situational. Suzuka's NP is Tenkiyame. It deals heavy AoE damage to all enemies and also increases your crit strength by a massive amount depending on overcharge. The damage on this Noble Phantasm is decent enough for farming thanks to the buffs from Supernatural Power and Blessing of Wisdom, but probably even more important than the damage is the heavy star generating and crit buff that this NP gives. Much like Raiko and Emiya, Suzuka is built around using her Noble Phantasm to generate a large amount of crit stars, and then using those stars on the following turn to do a massive amount of follow-up damage. To this extent, Suzuka's skills have good synergy with her Noble Phantasm. Her base NP gain is good enough, but it's further supplemented by the NP charge from Blessing of Wisdom, so she can get her Noble Phantasm off very reliably. The buffs from Supernatural Power also ensure that Suzuka can get a solid turn of damage and a ton of star generating anytime she Noble Phantasms. Her crit damage buff from Tenkiyame is also strong, and provided that she can gather crit stars, it can allow her to deal some very good damage over the course of 3 turns. But while Suzuka does have a solid setup built around her Noble Phantasm, the flip side to that is she is wholly dependent on her Noble Phantasm to work efficiently. When she isn't reaping the benefits of her NP, Suzuka's damage and overall viability drop significantly. She cannot provide much utility outside of a very situational charm, and her non-crit damage is below average due to not having a high uptime attack buff like Charisma. She also has poor star generating outside of her Noble Phantasm, so she isn't self-sufficient. And while she can charge her Noble Phantasm quickly thanks to her skills, there is still going to be a few turns of downtime in between NPs. Another major flaw for Suzuka is an utter lack of any defensive skills, making her extremely fragile. She requires a lot of babysitting, both defensively and to enable her offensively outside of NP turns. But Suzuka's biggest weakness is that she has no star gather skills. She is a servant built completely around buster crits, yet as a saber, her innate star gathering weight is just average, and she has no skills to ensure that she gets crit stars. Most star generators will actually tax a fair amount of stars that they generate from her, and because of this, it makes her a lot less reliable. Thankfully, a good team comp can cover up for most of Suzuka's weaknesses. The key to making sure that Suzuka can work in crit comps is to bolster her consistency when it comes to gathering crit stars. To that extent, Brynhilde, Edison, and Steno are excellent teammates. Brynhilde is especially great because she can use Hero's Sidekick to boost Suzuka's star gather rate. Edison has a star generating engine built into his second skill, and his concept improvement can greatly bolster Suzuka's crit damage. And Steno is a good star generator that can double buff Suzuka with her Whim of the Goddess ability, and she also has great anti-mail capability to match Suzuka's charm. Just be aware that Steno does have a higher star weight, so you'll need to overcome that with a Star Absorb Craft Essence on Suzuka. You'll also need a teammate who can keep Suzuka alive and buff her non-crit damage so that she can still function well in between Noble Phantasms. Leonidas, Nightingale, and Nero Bride are all great defensive choices. All 3 provide either a strong heal or defensive utility, and all 3 also provide a strong attack buff with good uptime. Leonidas can also provide a good amount of crit stars with his Noble Phantasm, and Nero can greatly increase Suzuka's NP gain rate. Suzuka's Bondcraft Essence is Tenma Spring's training. It increases the Buster Card effectiveness and NP damage of all allies by 10%. A very good craft essence to use if you don't have a dedicated crit team and would rather focus on using Suzuka as a more balanced servant. But if you do want to focus on using Suzuka for heavy crit damage, then CEs like Limited Zero, Victor from the Moon, Joint Recital, and Talk of the Hot Sands are your best options. The first 3 craft essences are going to maximize your damage potential, while Talk of the Hot Sands or Seal Designation Enforcer are ideal for making Suzuka more consistent. There are more out-of-the-box options as well, like Prisma Cosmos or Demonic Bodhisattva. Prisma Cosmos stacks well with Blessing of Wisdom so that you can NP much quicker and potentially have near permanent uptime on your crit damage buff, while Demonic Bodhisattva will drastically increase the power of your crit damage buff. And for a bit of future proofing, keep an eye out for Tale of Love and Hope. It gives Suzuka everything she needs: a buff to Star Absorb, a buff to crit damage, and starting Noble Phantasm charge so that you can Noble Phantasm quickly. Overall, Suzuka has the makings of a potentially strong crit servant. She has a strong skill set, good AoE damage, a monstrous crit buff tied to her Noble Phantasm, and a consistent NP charge skill with very little downtime. but in turn, she lacks consistency in her star generating. She's completely dependent on her Noble Phantasm to do anything. She has no defensive skills, almost no utility outside of an unreliable charm, and the worst of all, she has no real way of gathering crit stars for herself. All of this really holds her back, so she gets a B- from me. She can be a solid option if you lack a good Buster Saber or a farming saber, but to get the most out of her toolkit, she needs a lot of crit support and babysitting, and even at her best, she doesn't particularly reach the level of other AoE crit buster servants like Nobu or Emiya. And those are my thoughts on Suzuka. I know a lot of people are hyped for her because she is an absolute 10 out of 10 beauty, and to those of you rolling for her, I wish you luck. As always, let me know what you think in the comments down below. Don't forget to leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and consider subscribing if you really enjoyed the video. Join the party over at our Discord, chill with us on Twitch, and follow us on Twitter. And I'll see you all in the next Servant Spotlight. So Roni out. Later.